Hi everyone, this is Justin, and today I'm going to go over the quirks and features of the new for 2022 Sierra Designs Gigawatt 60-liter backpack. Now, normally for most YouTuber outdoor influencers, this is where I would show the intro logo video thing. I don't have one of those, so I'm just going to stand here quietly for a couple seconds and you can just kind of hum a catchy tune in your head and picture some scenery, and I'll be right back with you. Alright, great intro video. So let's get on with the review. Details of this pack to get started. This is a 60-liter backpacking backpack. Sierra Designs calls this their affordable option to get out into the backcountry, and affordable it is at $120, $119.95 US. It comes with a lifetime warranty, a sprung steel internal frame that goes around the perimeter of the pack, and it is made of a 300 denier ripstop of polyester, and it comes in at just over 4 pounds. Now that is according to Sierra Designs. When I weigh this thing on my scale, I get 3 pounds 15 ounces, so there may be some variability. And there are some fairly long straps on here. This is a one-size-fits-all backpack. So if you buy this and you've got a lot of extra room in some of these straps, you could presumably trim them down a little bit after adjustment and probably save maybe an ounce on this pack. But we're still looking at around 4 pounds. So let's get into the review. In terms of how I use this thing, I just bought it. I purchased this with my own money from an online retailer. And I took this out on an overnight trip into the Queen Elizabeth II wildlands, hiked in about 5 or 6 kilometers, set up camp, stayed overnight, packed it up, and hiked back out. It was about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius during the day and got down to just below zero at night. And beautiful trail conditions, about 2 feet of snow on the ground. So overall, great trip into the backcountry, and I've come away with some initial impressions about the functionality of this pack, especially for the price and relative to the weight. So starting at the top of the pack, you will see this doesn't have kind of the brain setup that you see in a lot of packs around this price point and around this weight. This has a kind of lid enclosure. Now the nice part of this is that it gives you really good access to the inside of the pack. It opens up all the way, has a fairly robust zipper. The disadvantage though is that if you have anything in the top, it puts the pack off balance, and so when you have this thing open, unless you're leaning it up against something, it's going to fall over on you, which is pretty annoying. And the other comment I have is that the zipper that Sierra Designs has put on here is pretty rough. It's pretty hard to do up, even if there's not much in the pack, or it's putting pressure on the zipper. So it's kind of hard to work with only one hand. So you're really going to want to be leaning this up against something, maybe against your body, when using both hands to undo the zipper. But the top enclosure access does give you pretty quick access to the interior, unlike a more typical roll top enclosure where you have to unroll it, maybe undo some straps, undo the buckle, and then open it up. So nice quick access to the top of your pack. So it's a great place to store your puffy jacket, for instance, within the context of winter camping. There's also a separate pocket up here that is on top of the lid, right? So you can see there. And you've got a separate zippered compartment with a mesh on the inside there. So you could toss in your keys, your wallet, any of your valuables that you really don't want, let's say, potentially falling out of a pocket during the course of your hike, along with some other smaller items. You can see I have a waterproof pack cover in there. We'll talk about that in a second. And a few other items that I want to be able to access quickly. Now, once again, the disadvantage of a lid configuration like this is that if you've got a bunch of stuff in your pack that's pressing up against the lid, then the functional space in this little top compartment is going to be limited by what's in your pack. So don't expect to put too many bulky items or get too much volume out of this top lid component. but it is there to hold a few small items that you want to be able to access quickly without going into the body of the pack. Moving down the front of the pack, you can see the first kind of interesting feature here. We have a large stretch mesh pocket along the entire front of the pack that should be very reminiscent of most through hiking packs. And then we have this rather strange buckle enclosure. So the buckle enclosure just connects to the front of the pack at the front of the lid, and it's reinforced with a bit of the polyester ripstop up here. So clearly Sierra Designs did not feel comfortable anchoring this directly to the stretch mesh material, which I think is a good call. But one really wonders what the utility of this is. It adds a little bit of weight, it adds some stitching, and thus probably some cost to producing this pack. In most other packs with a mesh front pocket, you would just have some sort of stretchy material along the top of the pocket that would keep it flush with the bag and keep everything inside. But in this case, Sierra Designs, I guess, has decided to go with this clip enclosure to ensure that things stay in the pocket. Now you can see I have my rain jacket in here. I also had my pants, my waterproof pants in here as well. And the pocket is actually fairly tight, and the material isn't actually that stretchy. So there's really no chance of anything in this pocket really coming out unless you've overstuffed it. So the utility of this buckle here is, in my opinion, pretty limited, and Sierra Designs really could have just gone with some sort of stitch-in stretchy component at the top to keep this thing flush with the bag. The other thing you'll notice that isn't immediately obvious in this pack is that this front pocket, as well as the side pockets, actually extend down to the bottom of the bag. And at the bottom quadrant here, you have the ripstop material instead of the stretch material. Now, I'll point out why this is a bit of an issue when we get to the side pockets, but you'll notice it is there, it has a little bit of volume, and you can stuff stuff down into there. So this is an absolutely massive pocket. Moving on to the sides, what we'll see is there are two more stretch pockets. When I go winter camping, I love having an Nalgene so I can heat it up, fill some hot water and put it in my sleeping bag on my feet at night. So I've got that here. And you can see it fits into the stash pocket. But there are two problems with this. And problem number one is that given where this pocket sits, it's pretty high, and the bag is pretty wide, to be honest. If you're wearing this on your pack, it's very hard to actually reach your water during the day, get it out, and even if you can get it out, getting it back in with one hand is extremely difficult. So one of the kinds of utility you would typically expect out of a side pocket like this is easy access to your water, and you're not really going to get that with this pack. The other issue is that the stretch material that Sierra Designs has chosen is not very stretchy. And what appears to happen, I was able to get my Nalgene in here with a fair bit of work the first time, and the material has now relaxed a fair bit. And this is after 1 day and 1 night of use. So I can see this material getting quite loose over time if it stretches out and then doesn't go back to its original shape, and that might indicate some issues with durability with this pack. The other thing, which we talked about on the front of the pack, is that the bottom portion is done in this ripstop material, and there's a seam here, right? They obviously had to stitch the stretch material to the main body fabric, so it's not stretchy at all once you get to this seam. And if you're using this bag like I do, which is typically you pack it with your sleeping bag in the bottom, if that's taking up a fair amount of space, this has been used for winter camping, so it's a large -20 Celsius rated bag, you get a fair bit of tension on the sides of the bag because it's a big sleeping bag. And so getting things down into the ripstop portion of this pocket past this seam is extremely hard to do. So you may be looking at this thing going, oh, there's a fair bit of space in here, especially with this bottom portion. but it's hard to use that space depending on what you have inside the pack in the bottom. If we look at the other side here, you would also want to consider another potential durability concern here. Now, I like to pack my poles if I'm carrying a freestanding or semi-freestanding tent on the outside of the bag, and these stash pockets are great for that. But you know, poles are pretty pointy, so you really wouldn't want the bottom of your poles sitting up here and putting pressure on the mesh, because that is probably going to lead to a puncture over time. But getting them past this seam so that the bottoms of the poles are sitting in the much more durable 300 linear fabric material is pretty hard to do, again, depending on what you have on the inside of this pack. So you want to be careful when packing this thing, and if you're putting something like your poles on the outside, you'll probably want to get them in first, cram them down into the bottom so that the bottoms of the poles are protected and protecting your stretch material, and then try to fit in your sleeping bag or any other bulky item inside after that. Looking at the front of the pack again, we do have some little stretchy loops here, so we can attach hiking or trekking poles or ice axe or anything like that to the outside of the pack. You've got one on each side with some adjustability, which is nice. And you do have clips for a closed cell foam pad or something else that you may want to strap to the bottom of the pack. And I actually quite like the positioning of this because it's kind of on the front third of the base of the pack. And when you get the closed cell foam pad on here, it's kind of sitting out on a little bit of an angle. You know, if you've got your sleeping bag in here, this is kind of rounded a little bit. And so it leaves a fair bit of the base of the pack open. And if you're hiking in rocky areas, you may be scrambling down some boulders, you have to sit on your butt and slide yourself down, then not having that area down here obstructed by your closed cell foam pad gives you a little bit more maneuverability when out on the trail. The clips are pretty durable. Again, this is a budget backpack, so they're not going to go with kind of fancy ultralight clips for this thing. And so I would have no concerns about the durability of this part of the bag. It looks pretty solid. The final rather strange feature that they have on this bag, which looks like it's kind of coming over from the Kelty bags, Sierra Designs being a sister company of Kelty, is this side access zipper, which is very strange to me because you really wonder what it would be used for. And within the context of this bag, which is a bag with an easy access top compartment and a bunch of stretch pockets for access to other things, plus pockets on each of the hip belts, you really wonder what you would be going into the body of your pack for during the day. Once I get to my campsite at the end of the hike for a day, I'm probably going to go in through the top, pull out my tent, pull out my cooking equipment. So there's really no reason for me to ever want to get in here quickly unless I'm already unpacking my bag anyways, in which case I can just access it through the top component. So this is a potential failure point. You are potentially putting a lot of pressure on the zipper here as you zip it up and unzip it if the bag is still fully packed. And it presumably adds some weight and cost to this bag for next to no increase in the utility or functionality of the bag. So I really don't get it. If they put out another version of this bag without the zipper, I think it would be a better bag, and it would probably be easier to make and more durable. So they may want to think about that. Let's move on to the suspension system. Now, this is a part of the bag that has some problems. So this is, again, a design that appears to come over from Kelty bags like the Red Wing. You have an adjustable one-size-fits-all suspension system. So we have the shoulder harness up here. It's attached to this kind of backing panel, which then is attached to the padded back panel with some Velcro. So you can slide this thing up and down. It supports a torso length between 16 inches and 21 inches. There's nice helpful markings on the back of the bag to help you adjust. I'm here at just above 18 inches for my particular back and torso length. And here's the issue. The harness is adjustable, but the back panel, the padded back panel, is not. This is fixed into position. So at 16 inches torso length, the harness is going to be flush with the top of the padded back panel, which means the padded back panel is actually going to be on your back. As you move up to a longer torso length, let's say you go up to 21 inches, there's going to be a fair bit of room between the top of the harness and the top of the padded back panel. And compounding the problem is the internal perimeter frame here has a fairly pronounced curvature to it, which is great because it produces a nice gap between this part of the bag and your lower back, so you get some ventilation in there, which is nice. But if the top point where this bag is making contact with your shoulders is pretty far up compared to the curvature, pretty much none of this padded back panel will actually be making contact with your back, which is really the point of the whole thing. What will be making contact with your back is this much harder and not padded panel that connects the harness to the back panel. So on a single day hike, like I did, one day out, one day back, I didn't notice it too much. I could definitely feel the harder material on my back, and I suspect that over a multi-day hike, where you're carrying a significant load and you've really cinched this thing down to your body to make sure it's stable, this may end up chafing over time. So I'm hoping to do a longer term review of this pack after multiple multi-day trips, and we'll see if this becomes an issue. But it's something you want to keep in mind if you're considering this pack. The adjustability has clearly been designed with budget in mind, and that's fine because they have hit a low price point, but it does come with a fairly significant downside, which is the nice padded back panel, which looks so comfy, might not actually do anything to protect your back at all. Looking at the straps themselves, we do have load lifters at the top. The frame does come to the top of the pack here, and the load lifters help to transfer that weight. They're connected pretty much right to where the panel, to where the frame hits the top of the pack. So these are nice, especially if you've got a shorter torso, for helping to ensure that weight is transferred from your shoulders down to your hips. So that's always nice to see. We have these little stretchy straps here. So while there are no pockets on the shoulder harness, you could attach some sort of third-party hanging pocket on either side here, or for those of you who like to have cameras hanging on your bags, you could attach a camera clip or anything else to those straps. You do get an adjustable sternum strap. It's got a nice little stretch component in here, so it's pretty comfortable and easy to use. And of course, it can move up and down the strap. I like to have my phone in a chest pocket because it keeps it warmer and helps keep the battery. So it's nice to be able to adjust this down over or under some obstruction in the jacket or the sweater that I'm wearing, so that it's still comfortable on the trail. So that's a nice feature to see, again, in a budget backpack. The straps themselves are bizarrely hard. There are a number of different foams that have been used in this pack, and this is the hardest foam that I can find that's touching your body. The lumbar pad, very soft. The hip pads, which we'll get to in a minute, very soft as well. But this foam is very hard, even compared to other packs I've had where I would consider the foam in the shoulder straps to be pretty hard. So while it provides some good structure and probably helps with carrying heavy weights, which you're probably going to do in a 4-pound pack, I could see this getting uncomfortable on longer hauls, longer days with something like a 25-pound loadout. So I would have liked to see maybe some slightly softer foam used in here. Moving down to the lower portion of the harness and suspension system, we do have a very generous, extremely thickly padded hip belt. I assume part of this is because this is a one-size-fits-all hip belt, there are no other size options. It does need to accommodate a great range of sizes and body shapes. And so, with all this padding, you can really cinch this thing down, and the padding will compress along your hips and really give you a nice fit. And I found that the overall comfort and fit of the hip belt was fantastic. I was able to adjust it very well. It really hugged my hips, and with the torso length adjusted properly, it hit in just the right place. The strange thing, or the thing that I think could have been better, is this multi-point adjustment that we see here. So Sierra Designs points this out in their marketing materials. You can see that on each side of the hip belt, we have two connection points, right? So you can adjust this, and the idea is that it adjusts from the top, and the bottom adds a little bit more stability and allows you to kind of dial in the fit to really shape the hip belt to the shape of your hips. Now, in most other designs I've seen, you have independent adjustment of the top strap and the bottom strap on each side. That's going to add a little bit more hardware, a little bit more weight, and a little bit more cost. What Sierra Designs has here is just a single adjustment point on either side. On one side, it's on the bottom, and on one side, it's on the top. And in my initial use of this, I don't feel that you're getting as much of an effect in really dialing in the fit compared to two independent adjustments. So the utility of that is probably minimal, or just not as good as a situation where you would adjust both independently. The other strange thing that I find here is the quality of this hardware. So in most cases, Sierra Designs has used some relatively heavy and thick pieces of plastic for their different connectors and enclosures and so on. But the belt buckle, the thing that is probably going to take the most pressure in terms of a plastic piece, is tiny. So, it saves some weight, but why on earth would you decide to save weight here instead of on these buckles, for instance, which are, you can see, significantly thicker? So I do have some durability concerns about the main hip belt buckle, given how thin it is and how much pressure you may want to put on this for a heavy pack you may be carrying 25-30 pounds with. It remains to be seen whether this buckle is going to be able to stand up to the test of time. Now, looking at the sides of the hip belt, we do have some fairly large side pockets here, and these are quite nice. They're pretty big, and so you can fit a large phone, a bunch of snacks. In my case, I had my gloves and my toque in here, so I could kind of add and remove layers as I was going without having to go into the relatively inaccessible side pockets or front pocket, and they performed fine. They're not as big as you might expect, just because this hip belt is, the padding comes pretty much to the edge of the pocket here, so they don't have much depth to them. So while they're large, you're probably not going to get anything very thick in there. So a phone, a couple of Cliff bars, or some other energy bar that you want to put in there is probably all you're going to manage to fit. Now the final thing to talk about with this pack is the weight. So 4 pounds is obviously not in ultralight territory. I assume that anyone who started watching this video who is an ultralight or super ultralight hiker has already left. But if you're still here, to state the obvious, this pack is not for you. What you would want to see in a pack like this is a much lighter suspension system if you were going with a suspension system at all. So you would want the frame to be made of aluminum or carbon or something like that that would weigh significantly less than steel. Obviously, steel has been used because it's going to be cheaper, and this bag does come in at $120. So what kind of person is going to carry a 4-pound backpack, and is it worth the price savings to buy a heavier pack? Well, we can think about some comparisons, right? From Sierra Designs themselves, there's the flex capacitor. The 40 to 60 liter bag is going to come in at 2 pounds and 10 ounces, thereabouts, given the hip belt and harness size you're going for. So you're saving over a pound. But the price of that bag is $219.95. So you're saving a pound and 5 ounces, a pound 6 ounces for an additional $100. Now, is that going to be worth it to you? And I think the answer to that depends on how you're using the bag. If you're going on overnights, fairly short distances, then adding an extra pound, saving $100 is pretty good. And if this is your first pack and you're just trying to figure out, do I like backpacking enough to invest in something more substantial and more feature-rich and light, like the flex capacitor, you probably want to start with something like this and save that $100. But you will notice the difference. The hike that I took this pack on, I actually did with another pack I have that weighs over a pound less than this. It comes in, like the flex capacitor, at around 2 pounds 10 ounces. And I used the same loadout in the pack. So the only difference was the pack itself. And I definitely noticed the difference in weight this time. Now, for one day, that's not bad. For 5 or 6 days on a trail, between 0 days, let's say, you're definitely going to be noticing the fact that you hold an extra pound all that distance. So for more advanced backpackers looking at more ambitious trips, or certainly for thru hikers where weight is much more of a priority than it is for an entry-level context, this is not going to be a very good choice. You would definitely want to invest the extra $100 or whatever it is to save that pound of weight. But let's think about other packs. Another probably reasonable comparison would be the Kelty Coyote 65. It has a little bit more capacity at 65 liters. Very similar design overall. It has this weird side zipper thing. It has the same adjustable kind of crappy suspension system for the attachment system for the harness. And that Coyote comes in at $189.95 and weighs 4 pounds 10 ounces. So I would say in the comparison between the two, the Gigawatt probably wins that comparison. It's a little bit lighter, it's pretty significantly cheaper, and has a similar range of features and functionality, so far as I can see, compared to the Kelty Coyote. Going up a level in terms of price point, maybe you look at something like the Osprey Rook 65. Again, a little bit more capacity at 65 liters, but coming in at $230 and weighing 3.5 pounds. So you save about a half pound, you get a little bit more capacity, but you're going up from $120 to $230. Now, maybe the deciding factor there is that Osprey has a fantastic reputation in terms of honoring warranties. So, if you have any issues with that Osprey pack, you're probably going to be taken care of. It's worth pointing out that Sierra Designs does advertise a lifetime warranty on this pack as well. And despite having numerous other pieces of Sierra Designs gear, I've never actually had to deal with returning or getting anything repaired. So maybe the value of the Osprey warranty, given their reputation, is worth that extra cost, but maybe it isn't. So my overall initial impressions of this bag are pretty favorable. I think they hit the right set of features for the price point. The weight is heavier than I would like, but pretty understandable for a $120 bag. But my main criticisms are around some of the material choices. This stretch material is just kind of bad, and I really worry about the durability of this over time, especially along the stitch points for the front pocket. And I'm rather concerned about how this is going to feel on the body over a longer hike. Given that the bag is heavy in and of itself, it's 60 liters, you're probably going to be carrying a heavier loadout in here. Otherwise, why would you have this very heavy-duty perimeter frame? And so I suspect that this pretty hard foam and the non-padded portion of the back panel making contact with my back are going to result in some discomfort over time. With that being said, I like this pack enough that I'm going to continue using it, and so I will hopefully be able to follow up with a longer-term review from some multi-day hikes through the spring and the summer to really get a sense for how this bag performs over a number of different trips in a number of different conditions. So I hope this was useful, and I guess I'll see you when I post my follow-up video.